On Christmas Eve, my father announced, "You are a burden, and you can't live with us anymore." The next day, when I started packing my things and told them I would stop paying the bills, Christmas dinner was almost over when my father put down his fork. He looked me straight in the eyes and said, "You are a burden, and you can't stay here anymore." At first, I thought I had misheard him. My mother let out a nervous laugh, as if she wasn't sure whether he was serious. But then he just stood there, staring at me, waiting for a reaction. Silence filled the room. My younger sister, Lily, froze with her fork halfway to her mouth. She looked at me with wide eyes, as if she couldn't believe what she had just heard. I swallowed the piece of ham I was chewing and set my fork down. "What? You heard me," he said. "You've been here too long. You need to leave." I stood there trying to process it. I was 23 years old, had a stable job, and could have moved out a long time ago. But I stayed because they needed me. I paid for electricity, internet, groceries almost every week. Things they couldn't afford because my father had been unemployed for years and my mother only worked part-time. I wasn't a burden. I was the reason the lights were still on in that house. And now, out of nowhere, they were kicking me out like I was useless. My mother finally spoke. "Maybe we should talk about this later." But my father cut her off. "No, Ed, this is my house. I make the rules, and I'm saying he shouldn't be here anymore." Lily set her fork down. She was only 16 years old, and she looked scared. She glanced at our parents like she didn't recognize them. If they could kick me out so easily, what did that mean for her? I took a deep breath. I wasn't going to argue. I wasn't going to beg. If they wanted me gone, fine. But they weren't ready for what that actually meant. I leaned back in my chair. "All right." My father straightened like he had won some imaginary battle. My mother looked uncomfortable, but she said nothing. Maybe she was in shock, or maybe she just didn't care as much as I thought. I stood up, took my plate to the sink. I wasn't going to give them the reaction they were expecting. Instead, I looked at Lily, still sitting there, tense and confused. I gave her a small nod. She was the only person at that table who still mattered to me. My father took a sip of his drink like nothing had happened. My mother went back to picking at her mashed potatoes. Lily kept looking at me, like she wanted to say something, but couldn't. I didn't stay to finish dinner. I just left. I didn't say another word that night. I went straight to my room, closed the door, and started packing my things. I wasn't going to waste time trying to understand why. If they wanted me gone, then I'd go. But that also meant they would lose everything I paid for. And I wasn't going to warn them. I packed in silence, but I could hear them talking downstairs. My mother's voice was soft and hesitant. My father's was firm, like he was trying to convince her of something. I caught a few sentences. "He's old enough. We'll manage. He should have moved out a long time ago." An hour later, Lily knocked on my door. I opened it, and she stepped inside, closing it behind her. She looked furious. Her eyes were red, like she had been crying. "What the hell was that?" she whispered. "I don't know," I said, shoving my laptop into my backpack. "But I'm leaving tomorrow." She shook her head. "This is insane. You pay for everything. They can't even buy food without you. Not my problem anymore." She bit her lip, tried to hold back tears. "Where are you going?" "I'll figure it out." The truth was, I had some money saved up, but I hadn't planned on moving out this suddenly. I'd have to find a place quickly, maybe stay with a friend for a while. But I wasn't worried. I'd be fine. They wouldn't. Lily hesitated. "I could," she stopped. I knew what she wanted to ask. She wanted to come with me, but she was still in high school. And as much as I hated leaving her behind, I couldn't take her with me. You know they'd never allow that. She looked down. "I know." I finished packing while she just stood there, like she didn't want to leave my room. "Finally," she sighed. "They're going to regret this." I smirked. "I know." The next morning, I left before they woke up. I carried my bags downstairs, loaded them into my car, and took one last look at the house. No sadness, no regret, just relief. Then, as I pulled out of the driveway, I opened my banking app and removed my name from every bill: electricity, internet, water, even Netflix. I had been paying for everything. Without me, everything would be shut off in a month. I smiled, shifted gears, and drove away without looking back. Over the next few days, I crashed at my friend Jake's apartment while I looked for my own place. His couch was awful, his dog Max wouldn't stop staring at me while I tried to sleep, and his annoying roommate kept asking if I was staying forever. But none of that mattered because I was free. No more paying for a house I didn't want to live in. No more pretending to respect a man who had no problem kicking me out on Christmas Eve. No more being treated like an ATM with legs. For the first time, I was doing something for myself. Then, 3 days later, my phone started ringing. At first, I ignored it. 7 missed calls from my mother. 2 from my father, which was shocking, since he never called me. and a few messages from Lily. I ignored all of them until she sent this. They're freaking out. The power got shut off. I grinned. Did they really think the bills paid themselves? Then came another message. Dad is pissed. He says you did something to the house. Oh, this was getting good. In the following days, I ignored all their attempts to contact me. My mother kept calling, texting, even tried reaching out on social media. My father, on the other hand, only called those 2 times and never again. He was probably waiting for me to come crawling back. But that was never going to happen. I stayed at Jake's apartment while looking for a permanent place. He was cool about it, but his roommate was a total jerk, always asking when I was leaving, making jokes about me being homeless, and even complaining when I used the kitchen. None of that bothered me. I knew it was temporary. But while I was moving on with my life, my family seemed to be falling apart. Lily kept texting me, giving me updates on the chaos at home. First, the electricity was cut off. Then, the internet. The water took a bit longer, but when it finally stopped running, that's when my mother lost it. She's panicking, Lily wrote. She says she doesn't know how we're supposed to shower now. I couldn't help but smile. They kicked me out, thinking I was a burden. Now, they were living in darkness, without water, and couldn't even watch TV. The cherry on top came when Lily sent me another text. He lost it. He's breaking things in the living room. The image of my father, throwing a tantrum like a spoiled child because his magical bills weren't getting paid, filled me with pure satisfaction. He says he'll figure something out, but Mom is crying in the bedroom. Of course, he said that. My father was a failure, but he always pretended to have things under control. Except this time he didn't. I ignored everything and kept living my life. 2 weeks later, I finally found a place of my own. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. I used some savings and rented a small furnished apartment. It had a decent couch, a comfortable bed, and most importantly, it was far from that house. On moving day, Lily sent me a message. I need to get out of here. My chest tightened. I knew she was struggling, but I couldn't just take her with me. She was still a minor. You know I can't, I replied. She took a while to respond. I know, but I can't take this anymore. I wouldn't be able to, either. Living with him, no electricity, no water, no internet, with my father yelling and my mother whining all the time. Pure hell. But their problems weren't my problems anymore. I was free. Then, a few nights later, the inevitable happened. It was late. I had just taken a shower and was getting ready for bed when my phone rang. My mother. I rolled my eyes and declined the call. Minutes later, Lily texted me. Pick up. I sighed and finally answered. Before I could say anything, my mother's desperate voice came through the phone. Please come back home. I let out a short laugh. No, we need you. I know your father was harsh, but he didn't mean it. He meant exactly what he said, I replied coldly. You kicked me out. Now deal with it. She started sobbing over the phone. We can't do this. The house is falling apart. Sounds like your problem. She cried louder. Please. I know we were wrong, but please. I could have felt sorry for her, but I didn't. All the time I spent in that house, paying the bills, doing everything I could to help. And in the end, I was treated like garbage. Now, they wanted me back. I wasn't stupid. No, I repeated. I hung up before she could say anything else. I lay down and slept better than I had in years, without anyone treating me like a walking ATM. In the following days, the calls continued. My mother begging, my sister asking for help, and my father, well, he never tried reaching out again. And then, finally, Lily sent me one last message. He's talking about selling the house. That caught me off guard. As useless as my father was, I never thought it would come to that. Selling. I replied, yeah. He says he can't do this anymore. Mom is freaking out, but he's serious. That made me laugh. So, in the end, my father really was as weak as I thought. If he couldn't manipulate someone into paying his bills, he just gave up. I wanted to feel something for them, but all I felt was disgust. I turned off my phone and went to sleep. But deep down, I knew this story wasn't over yet. In the following days, I ignored any attempts to contact me. I blocked my mother. My father never tried calling me again, and Lily, she kept trying, but I needed some time. I had to leave all of that behind and focus on my new life. In my small apartment, things were finally starting to fall into place. I had peace, silence, and I could spend my money on myself. My salary, which used to disappear into bills that weren't even mine, now allowed me to buy things I never could before. I decided to treat myself to small luxuries, went out to eat at good restaurants, bought new clothes, even signed up for a gym membership. The sense of freedom was indescribable, but I knew it wouldn't last forever. 2 weeks later, when I had practically forgotten about all of it, I got a message from an unknown number. I need to talk to you. It's serious. It was Lily. I sighed. I knew that at some point she would try to drag me back into the drama of our parents' house. But something about that message felt different. What is it? The reply came immediately. The house is being sold. Dad is already negotiating with a buyer. I let out a short laugh. To me, it didn't matter at all. So what? He's selling everything. Even your stuff. I froze. My stuff? Yeah. Your computer, your TV, even your bed. He said that since you didn't want to come back, you don't need them anymore. I felt heat rise in my chest. A rage I hadn't felt in a long time. That bastard kicked me out, tried to make me look like a useless nobody, and now he was getting rid of my things as if I had never existed. I took a deep breath. Tell me the buyer's address. Lily took a few minutes, but eventually replied. The man was interested in the entire house and was already negotiating everything inside it. I grabbed my car keys and left without thinking twice. The drive there was short. When I arrived, I saw a middle-aged man chatting enthusiastically with my father in the driveway. I didn't think. I just got out of the car and walked straight toward them. Are you insane? I asked, my voice filled with fury. My father turned to me, surprised. But then his face quickly shifted into that same look of contempt as always. Oh, so now you show up? There's nothing here for you anymore. The buyer glanced between us, clearly uncomfortable. Is there a problem? I ignored the man and stepped closer to my father. You have no right to sell my things. He laughed. Don't I? You didn't want anything to do with this house anymore, so you don't need anything that was in it. I paid for every single one of those things. I shouted. You're not selling anything that belongs to me. If you want them back, you can buy them. That response lit a fire inside me. I could have just walked away. I could have let him sell everything and moved on with my life. But no, that man threw me out on the street after years of me paying his bills. And now he wanted to profit off what I bought with my own money? Not this time. He wasn't going to get away with it. Fine. Sell the house. My father raised an eyebrow, surprised. What? Sell it, I repeated. But when you do, you won't have anywhere to live. He laughed. I'll buy an apartment. I smiled even more. With what money? He fell silent. And then he understood. He thought he was going to take the money from the sale and start over somewhere else. But he had no idea what I had already done. Over the next few days, I used everything I knew to get revenge. I contacted the electric company and informed them that the house was being sold. Any outstanding debts had to be settled before the property could be transferred. Same with the water company. Same with property taxes. And there was a lot of unpaid debt. The bills he never paid had piled up. He was about to receive a lump sum from the sale, but now a huge portion of that money was going straight to cover those debts. That alone would have been enough to ruin him. But I went further. I remembered something important. The house wasn't just in his name. My mother also had a legal share, and she had no idea about the sale. That's when I called her. At first, she was shocked. You never call me. Just want to let you know that your husband is selling the house behind your back. The silence on the other end of the line was so heavy, I could hear her breath catch. What do you mean? I explained everything. Every detail. She was in shock. He can't do that. He can if you let him. I knew that, despite everything, my mother still had influence over him. And I was right. The next day, Lily texted me. They're fighting like crazy. My father tried to defend himself, but he had no excuse. He couldn't sell the house without her consent. And without the money from the sale, he was trapped. That night, Lily called me. You won't believe this. What happened? He's moving out. I leaned back on my couch, satisfied. Oh yeah? Yeah. Mom told him that if he wants to sell everything so badly, then he can leave and do it alone. I knew my mother would never have had the courage to kick him out on her own. But after finding out that he was plotting behind her back, that was enough to push her to the edge. My father, homeless, broke, and without a wife, had no way out. Where's he going to live? I asked, curious. Lily laughed. He's calling his friends, begging for a couch to sleep on. I let out a deep, satisfied laugh. It was poetic. For years, they made me believe that I was a burden, a problem. And now, the only burden left in that house was him. You won, Lily said, still laughing. I just did what needed to be done. Do you want your stuff back? I thought for a moment. No, leave it all there. I had already started a new life. I didn't need anything from that house. Not the things, not the memories. The only thing I took with me was the certainty that no one would ever take advantage of me again. Months passed, and I moved on with my life without looking back. My small apartment was my sanctuary, my freedom. I never again had to pay bills that weren't mine, never again had to hear my father belittle me, never again had to carry the burden of supporting a house that was never truly mine. Meanwhile, their lives were falling apart. Lily told me everything. After my mother kicked my father out, he spent months couch hopping, begging friend for a place to stay. But one by one, they all started cutting him off. No one wanted to support a lazy, middle-aged man who had never done anything for anyone. No money, no job, and no house. The very house he tried to sell behind my mother's back. He was finally getting a taste of his own medicine. The most ironic part? He tried to go back to my mother. After a month of bouncing from place to place, unable to rent an apartment because of his bad credit, unable to get a job because of his history of unpaid debts, he showed up at the house and tried to convince her that maybe they could start over. My mother, who had always been easy to manipulate, didn't even hesitate this time. She locked the door in his face. He yelled, begged, tried to convince her that without him, she wouldn't be able to survive. But the truth was she already had. She started working more hours, learned how to manage her finances without relying on anyone. For the first time in years, my mother realized she didn't need a useless man like him. And me? Well, while he slept on strangers' couches, while my mother finally took control of her own life, I was living better than ever. After a while, I started investing the money that used to go toward electricity, water, and food for 3 adults that weren't me. I took courses, learned to manage my own finances, and focused on growing in my career. Over time, I got a promotion at work. The same job my father mocked, saying wasn't enough to support me on my own. Ironic, considering that it was my salary that supported him for years. Now, not only was it enough, but it allowed me to do all the things I never could before. I traveled. I visited places I never had the chance to see. Places I couldn't go because there was always another bill to pay. I bought a better car. Nothing extravagant, just something comfortable, something that was truly mine. And best of all, peace. I no longer had to come home to my father's complaints, my mother whining about bills, or Lily trapped in that toxic environment. Speaking of Lily, she was the only one who truly stayed by my side. We remained close, and I helped her however I could, making sure she never fell into the same trap I did. I encouraged her to study, to plan for the day she could leave home, so she would never end up in the same position I was in. And our father? Well, after my mother shut the door in his face, he had no choice but to finally face the consequences of his own life. No money, no friends willing to support him, no job. The last I heard, he was living off the pity of some distant relative, someone who had no idea what he had become and decided to give him a chance. But I know exactly how that story ends. He had always been a burden, and soon enough, they'd realize it too. The house I grew up in stayed with my mother. She worked hard to pay off the remaining debts, and eventually, she stabilized her life, without anyone draining her dry. As for me, I never went back there. There was no reason to. The boy who left that house on Christmas Eve, carrying his bags and removing his name from the bills, never looked back. And he never regretted it, because in the end, I won, and he lost everything.